Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Jason Benedict. I'm one of the co-founders of RX Ambassadors, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host today, Dr. Amit Kakar from Avalon Pharmacy. Hey, Amit, how are we doing today?
Good morning, JB. How are you? Good morning.
Good, good. Yeah, ready to kick off another episode?
Absolutely. Super excited, ready to close out the year. Podcast Friday. Let's go.
Let's go. Well, we have a special guest joining us today. We're going to be interviewing Michelle Lam from Sierra Pharmacy. So, welcome, Michelle.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. So, Michelle, tell us a little bit about where you're located and a little bit about your pharmacy.
Okay, so our pharmacy is called Sierra Pharmacy. We're located in Los Angeles County, specifically in Glendora, which is kind of a little bit east of Arcadia, if you know where that is. And it's been a long-standing community pharmacy. We've been around for over 50 years. I haven't been around for over 50 years, but the pharmacy has. We took over in 2020 during COVID. So the pharmacy went on the market. We saw a lot of potential. One of the first things I started was a vaccination program. It didn't exist at the time. It was a very traditional pharmacy. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. About myself, I'm a USC grad, so undergrad and graduate studies. Right now I'm doing community pharmacy, but I do have background in long-term care pharmacy and infusion as well.
Love it. I love it. You brought up a topic that is kind of omnipresent these days, right, Amit, with regards to do I sell, do I buy, where is it?
Right.
So you've recently bought a pharmacy. So Michelle, tell us a little bit about, what was the process like once you purchased the pharmacy and kind of taking it over and getting your feet underneath you?
Yeah, so prior to this, I had a little bit of business experience because my husband and I actually ran like a Taiwanese cafe. So in terms of customer service, it was very similar. Um, and you know, I already had a certain baseline knowledge about like how do we handle cash registers and employees and scheduling and all of that. And now I was incorporating my studied skill, which was my Doctor of Pharmacy degree. But before I pursued pharmacy ownership, I was an employee like everybody else. I was working at CVS at the time. Didn't feel really proud of the work I was doing and the care I was providing to patients. So I was pretty unhappy, stressed out. I felt unheard. I didn't feel like I was bringing any real value to the world. Like I kind of felt like this is a waste of time for everybody. So I wanted to carve my own path and be my own boss and kind of, make more of a difference. And so I just started researching pharmacy opportunities online. And I came across one that was being brokered by AmerisourceBergen, and we're like, hey, this might be potentially a good one. So we went out to visit and looked at the numbers, and yeah, that's how we ended up on the farm with pharmacy.
Love it. I love it. Amit, I know that's been a topic for you lately too. I'd love for you
Yeah.
to kind of chime in on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. Nice to meet you. And love to say, we actually share very similar stories. I actually went to USC as well. I have a few years on you. But I love to say, we share similar stories. I actually ended up working at CVS as well and just try to take my knowledge and my experiences, both good and bad, and implement them into independent pharmacy. I think it's worked out fantastic, but it's so fun to hear your story, how you've just started off in the business and your journey. It's just it's fun to watch. It's constantly. I know we've been in contact, but what a great story! Great way to start.
Well, I love it. We've got two USC grads on the call today, so that's good. And I think the next question I have for you, Michelle, is, now that you've acquired this pharmacy, you've been doing that for about 3 years now, right? Since 2020, since you acquired it. What's kind of been your biggest learning lesson this year in 2023? What's been the biggest takeaway for you?
One of the big changes I made in the past year, I had a baby last year, but after I had my baby in October, I wanted to make a push more for community engagement, putting myself out there, going to more networking events, putting myself in uncomfortable situations. I think as a pharmacist, as an owner, we have to wear many different hats, but we're not comfortable wearing all of those. And so I tried to focus more on community connections. So I joined more networking groups. I attend networking groups, even with salespeople for assisted living facilities. Like that's not really my wheelhouse, but I've learned a lot in that regard and putting myself out there and just marketing myself more and being confident in myself and in my pharmacy and our services that we provide to the community and how valuable they are. So
Yeah.
I think that's been a big change this year.
Beautiful. Well, congrats on the baby last year, and it's exciting to kind of juggle between motherhood and running a business and running teams. One thing that stood out to me that you just mentioned is kind of the community care, and I know that's a specialty that you've kind of dove into. So I always like to highlight specialty areas for pharmacies so that other pharmacists listening to our podcast can learn about the different strategies that pharmacists like yourself are doing. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in that sector?
Sure. So I think I was heavily pushing more towards community engagement with other businesses. I felt that we had a pretty strong, customer base, a lot of loyal customers who've been with us for a decade, 2 decades, even longer. So initially, I thought more about community outreach. When we first took over in 2020, the COVID vaccines came out in 2021. And so one of my biggest initiatives was starting a vaccine program and doing mobile vaccine clinics. So I would try to service, the boarding care facilities that only had 4 patients, and those CVSs and Walgreens were not coming out to see them. Or even the smaller assisted living facilities. I think back then the bigger chains were not going out if you only had less than 25 residents. So I saw that there was a need in the community, and I formed a lot of connections that way. And people started letting me know about, why don't you join this networking group? There's a infusion company in it, there's hospice, there's assisted living, community directors, salespeople. Like, it might be good to get the word out there. And since I had some long-term care experience, I thought that was a good combination that I could do, that I could still service our individual community members and the public, but also focus a little bit more on the long-term care side of things. So yeah, I'm in networking groups that focus on senior care, geriatric care, and I've met a lot of cool people through that.
That's amazing. What's been your kind of experience? I know that you kind of strayed away from the vaccine side of things and focused on other areas. Maybe you can add a little bit to that.
Yeah, and I love that. Actually, Michelle, I was going to ask you a question also regarding how you sort of alluded to how you differentiate yourself from the big box retailers. I like to learn myself, but Jason, to answer your question, we're in a medical center, so we have an urgent care in our facility. So we sort of let them handle the vaccine part of it. But what we have done is, in exchange, we've sort of been able to, we have a lot of walk-in traffic. And I'll get to this. I've been a member of RX Ambassadors for almost 4 years, and Michelle, welcome to RX Ambassadors. I'm so happy to have you. And I'd love to bring in Jason on this question. Is Jason has implemented so many innovative concepts for digital marketing to connect with our patients because we have so much traffic coming in. And Jason, maybe talk about one of the things that you've done so many that you feature in our pharmacy that's enabled us to connect with our patients and capture that traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I think this relates to Michelle as well. So one of the first things we did is we want to tap into existing resources. One of Amit's top resources was he had a ton of foot traffic coming in. But what he was seeing is people were coming in and they were just never coming back. They'd come in for a one-time prescription. And so what we helped him to do is to implement a check-in process so that now every time someone comes into his pharmacy, they check in, we capture their first name, their email, and their phone number. What's really unique now, Amit, is even when you're out of the office, out of the pharmacy, you have emails welcoming people with video, you have text messages being sent to them. So that brand recognition, and they feel like they build this relationship with the pharmacist and the pharmacy owner, even when you're out, maybe working on other things. And I know, Michelle, we've recently implemented that with you as well. And so I'd love to get Michelle's thought and process on that, since this is fairly new and fresh with her as well.
Yeah.
So I sort of came to realize, our strength as a community pharmacy is our personalized care. But how do we get the word out about that? We have a very loyal base, but beyond that, nobody really knows that we exist. We're very localized to the community. We put our touch on personal care every time the patient comes in, but sometimes it's only once a month, maybe twice a month when they pick up their meds. And so really, to get ourselves out there and maintain a competitive edge, I think we need to bring more value beyond those 1 or 2 monthly interactions. Because, our business is mostly based on word of mouth, but the big chain retailers, online pharmacies, they're doing a lot more. to market themselves. And we're kind of in an age where that's word of mouth is great, but it's not enough anymore. So we have to step up our game more. And so I think that the way to go, as scary as it is creating digital content, using automation and technology more to our favor. And that's the piece I found to be initially very daunting because number one, I'm not great at technology. Usually I just follow systems that are put in place for me. I don't like to start anything new with automation. Number two, like, how do I have time to implement something like this with all the other, balls I'm juggling as an owner? And this is something that's not my strength. So I thought more about like, how do I leverage other people's times and skills, like RX ambassadors. And that's kind of where it came into play for me.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned it's like most pharmacists don't have the background of digital marketing, and it's something that has to be learned and acquired. And I think sometimes, we kind of juggle as a business owner. We think we can take on everything, right? And we wear so many hats at times, and it's like, okay, what hat am I putting on today? So sometimes it just makes more sense to, hire and outsource some of the things that we're not great at, especially you guys have so much knowledge. Pharmacists have so much knowledge in pharmacy and medications, but trying to implement new marketing technologies or new processes to bring in new patients can sometimes feel like it's learning a new language and trying to figure out how do I do it successfully. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Michelle, what's one of the things that you've implemented recently with like regards to email marketing, right? You mentioned you're creating more of an engagement process. Tell us about some of the maybe some of the messages you've sent out, or some of the content that you're producing for your specific pharmacy customers and patients.
Okay, so like Amit, one of our first, I guess, campaigns was doing a check-in form. So each time a patient comes into the pharmacy, they check in with us on an iPad or a tablet, kind of like, how they would check in at a doctor's office. So we asked them, oh, can you please update your information, to make sure we have the most accurate information and just to provide better patient care overall. So that's something that we've just started doing a couple of weeks ago. And so they enter their name, their birthday, their phone number, and their email. And with that email, we actually have a monthly, it's called a nurture campaign, where we send out monthly content to them. So it could, be like happy holidays, happy new year. We hope you're staying safe and healthy during cold and flu season. Here are some tips to stay healthy. So it's kind of like a monthly touch point with them. And to, kind of just keep them engaged a little bit more than beyond when they come into the pharmacy physically.
Yeah, I want to tap into Amit here for a minute too, because I know that he has a lot of knowledge in terms of like how touch points and how that engagement has transitioned and changed the relationships that he has with his patients. So Amit, maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, and Michelle and JB, thank you. For me, it really started when I finally admitted that I just don't know certain things. I feel like in the pharmacy, I've been in the pharmacy for 25 years, so I've accumulated a little bit of knowledge, but in that time span, I feel like I've also accumulated a lot of realizations that I don't know a lot of things. And that's why I came to RX Ambassadors to realize that I need help. But that's the first step. And as I admitted that, I feel like I set myself free to go, okay, now I can get help instead of trying to do it on my own. So with these campaigns, with these check-ins, it's been incredible. I've had patients for 25 years. I've never known. I didn't know who they were. I knew they existed. And now I'm able to reach thousands of them. So we've built over time. It does take time. It takes patience. But over time, you build momentum because as you connect, you keep realizing, okay, this is great content. Like Michelle, for you, you're doing vaccinations. I mean, this content is gold for them. Why are vaccinations important? As a follow-up, come every year for your vaccines. This is why we're doing it. And to me, like, this is just the beginning of something really, really strong. And you're building momentum. And that's the key, is just to get maybe a few wins. Setting up the check-ins, that's a win. Sure, at times you realize, you look at your email list, we just started building, right? We all love to say this. I should have started an email list 10 years ago, right? Everyone tells us. But the fact that you're starting now and you're growing, but it's been tremendous. Happy birthday campaigns, they love. Something we didn't talk about is even if the patients are not your regular patients, you'll find them coming in and getting your information for newsletters. And eventually they will become your patients because they see what value you're bringing. And that's the key, I think, if you realize is what value am I bringing at the end of the day? And when you realize that, you really start creating your contouring your content, whether it's videos. I'm going to be the first person to say I never liked doing videos. I've done it for 4 years. I probably still don't watch videos of myself, but I will say this, I always say this, they're probably not going to look at your hair or what you look like or anything, but I promise you they'll hear your message. And that's all that matters. So what is your message? So that's really the key. And that's what RX Ambassadors has helped me tremendously, and just developing my message and my audience and just connecting with them.
Yeah, great point, Sumit. I think one thing that's really important to recognize for most independent pharmacy owners is that email creates a point of engagement, right? And engagement creates relationships. And the more engagement that you have with your patients, the more they feel like they're connected to a pharmacist. I always joked with Amit when we first started working together about 4 years ago, how I said every time I walked into, my pharmacy, Walgreens across the street, I said I felt like my pharmacist hates me because they never have time to talk to me. They always look upset.
Yeah.
I just want a relationship where I can ask questions and feel like someone cares about me. So, Michelle, maybe you can talk a little bit about what's some of the unique things you've done to connect with your patients and build better relationships.
So going back to community engagement, one thing that we've done recently is participate more in local health fairs and go out and provide free educational presentations at like senior centers, community centers. We get a good amount of intern students who are, going on rotation, who come to our pharmacies. So they help us, make some of those presentations, even present along with the pharmacist or myself. So I think that's helped a lot. And, to strengthen the relationship with our customers, we always foster a welcoming environment in pharmacy. We welcome customers by name. Many of them we do know on a first name basis. So I'd say I'm really proud of my team because we really do care about our customers and providing the best service possible. And, there's a lot of compassion and commitment behind our care. And I think it starts with the team being engaged themselves and being happy. So one thing I've also implemented in the past year is just doing kind of like a daily huddle with our staff. So we'll take 10, 15 minutes every morning to touch base, on the previous day's activities. And we'll go around and talk about, what worked well yesterday, any positive customer feedback. Then we'll go into, is there anything we can improve on? Or is there any negative customer feedback? And the third thing would be, is there anything that you need help with from the team? Do you have any announcements for us? So that kind of keeps everyone on the same page and feel like they're heard. And, it's really conducive to a team environment.
Love that. Michelle, tell us a little bit about your staff. How many team members do you have? How many are pharm techs versus pharmacists? Tell us the dynamics there.
Sure. So I have one pharmacist. She's actually a new grad, and 3 technicians. And I have a clerk/driver. So she takes all the deliveries in-house.
Great.
And just to let you know, a couple of our staff are new. So I hired them after I took over, but 2 of them were actually from the previous ownership, and they've been really great. But probably, as you know, Amit, it's not always easy to inherit staff. So it was a little bit of a bumpy road at the beginning, but now I'm like super happy with our team.
I love that. Maybe for some of the listeners who are listening in, tell us a little bit about how you find great staff. Where did you go to hire, right? What you mentioned the internship opportunities as well. So maybe you can speak a little bit on that.
Sure. So it's hard to get people just from the street. Like if you just post on LinkedIn or Indeed, I've had the most success through connections with technician schools. So, I'll reach out and ask them, do you have any extern students who need hours? So they'll volunteer with us maybe for 3 to 4 weeks. And then I've hired 2 technicians just from that, and they were reliable. They kind of have a test run when they're training with you, as opposed to just hiring someone from the street. And then actually the pharmacist I hired recently is from my alma mater, from USC. So I knew her because she also was on rotation with us previously. But yeah, it's hit and miss. I don't think there's really a proven process to hire.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
Yeah. It's definitely crazy when you try to hire, right? There's so many factors to take into consideration. Their experience, their personalities, their backgrounds, how do they have any specialties, right? Their commitment level, what are they looking to do in the next 5 to 10 years, right? There's so many factors to kind of take into consideration when hiring. But I think the most important one is culture, right? They have to be a culture fit. they've got to be able to align with your core values. So Amit, maybe you can highlight a tip or two about one tip that you've done to hire and retain great staff.
Yeah, thank you, JB. One of the things I've done, Michelle, I actually follow a very similar pattern. You're way ahead of the game. It took me years to figure out, go to the technician schools, because I actually found that I was bringing in technicians from Walgreens and Walmart, and there were some habits that I could not change. I tried everything I could. They're ingrained. So for me, it was easier to hire fresh and to teach. I think most important though, for me though, is to have them buy into the system. Like, is this something this is how we do things, or do you want to be part of this? And I think the honesty, being clear. I love the huddle meetings. We also set those up very briefly in the mornings. It took time for them to buy into the huddle meetings. And then we do like a major, I would say every Tuesday after work, we set up the meetings and we do a sort of a huddle meeting where we kind of recap the week, right? Everyone's, had the week go. One of the things that we've done actually is we've gone a little bit farther. So we do a little personality. So we kind of do, we call it, it's an Enneagram, but you can use whatever you like, but we do a little personality test. So we understand each other's personalities and which buttons we're not going to push. So I find myself getting my buttons pushed every once in a while. So I realize, okay, how can I teach everyone, like, this is the way I am, this is the way you are. And let's be respectful instead of trying to change everyone, right? I found myself trying to change people. And that's probably one of the things I learned from it. When nobody wants to be changed, but understand and be respectful. So with these personality, in the beginning, we did little personality tests and we gave each other's personalities to learn from. And it actually has made an incredible difference because we know certain people work a certain way, and let's be respectful of that. So just little things we implement, maybe taking it a little bit step further and investing in that. And I didn't know if they were going to buy into this, but after about the first few months, they started asking me questions like, hey, what do you think about this? Can we get some more information? So almost like introducing a topic and saying, hey, will this work? And so far it's been great. So you're on the right path. You've done everything. Sounds fantastic. So great job.
That's an amazing idea. I'm going to implement that. I think quizzes are fun. So that would
They
be
are.
great.
Yeah, they're great. And they actually love the fact that you're taking the time, right, to invest. And that's what you're doing, right? You're investing in them. You're investing in the business. You're investing in our patients. Because also, at the end of the day, who benefits from all this? The patients, right? At the end of the day, that's what we remember, right? What is the purpose here? Is our patients, right? I love to work with my staff. Staff loves to work with me at times. But at the end of the day, who's going to benefit? And they're the patients. So that's really, if we can all remember that and explain that. And one of the things I also try to make it a point every day to remind our staff is treat patients the way you want to be treated. So let's say something doesn't go right. I'll stop and go, is that the way you want to be treated? If your mother or father walked into the pharmacy, would you bend backwards and forwards the same way you do for them as you do for the patients? And I believe it's a fair question to ask. And I have to remind myself that sometimes too. At the end of the day, sometimes we're tired, we're annoyed, and that's the time, the last 15 minutes for some reason. Michelle, I know you've been in the business long enough to know, I don't know why, but the last half an hour of the day is usually when something goes haywire. And I still can't figure out to this day why. But the point is, that's the time we realize, okay, no, this is going to happen, and just be prepared and be compassionate until the final bell sounds. So that's.
Yeah, great feedback. Michelle, one of the things that stood out between the topics you and Amit just said is like, hiring from big box retail chains into an independent pharmacy. Amit talked about the habits, right? There's different habits and cultural practices in the big box chains versus the small ones. So what's some of the habits that you like to instill in your independent pharmacy to create collaboration and foster an amazing relationship with your team and your staff's relationships with your patients?
Definitely open communication and being able to approach the pharmacist and not be fearful that they're going to get reprimanded or something. Because the previous prior to me, the previous pharmacist was much older and more traditional and strict, and he could get really moody too. So then some of the staff would be scared to approach him. And I said, I want to hear your feedback. This is a team effort. Like, yes, I'm kind of the captain of the ship, but everyone is doing their part. And I want to hear, if there's something I'm not doing well, please let me know, because also I'm new. I'm learning from you as well. So if there's something I can improve on, please let me know. Otherwise, it's going to be an unhappy environment, and there could be some resentment and stuff like that. So, I just try to be as open as possible.
Love that. Yeah, kind of taking away the hierarchy, right? And creating more of a linear process for anybody to come in and talk and provide feedback and show ownership. That's one of the things I love about Arts Ambassadors and our team as well is we create and foster relationships not through a hierarchy where it starts at the top. It's everyone has an opportunity to grow and to innovate and to inspire and make an impact in someone's day. And I think that goes a long way. And your patients and your clients and your team members, they all recognize and respect that. One thing I always like to talk about on the episode, Michelle, is challenges. What are maybe some of the challenges that you've encountered this year that and what was the challenge? How did you approach it? And I'd love to have you speak on that a little bit.
Since I've been more involved in networking and marketing, I would say the challenge is, kind of forming partnerships with certain people or other businesses and companies. And sometimes they promise you something or like, oh, yes, I'd love to start service with you. And then it doesn't happen. It falls through. And so we kind of just have to get used to that. Like, it's not always going to work out, but you have to keep going right. Because relationships, they're not going to be formed within a month or two, right? Sometimes I realize you have to prove yourself first. Maybe that company is just testing you, and persistence is the key. You have to keep going. So don't be discouraged, but pick yourself back up and keep going. That's something that I had to mentally overcome for sure, because I've been disappointed. And then, you get surprised, good surprises sometimes too. Like the other day, I got a referral from basically one of the healthcare advocates in our community. And they were saying that, oh, I heard such great things about you. Can you help my father with this? He needs these vaccinations. He needs medication delivery. So there's always a silver lining. You kind of just have to keep going and remember what your cause is and why you're doing it. Because we get so much positive feedback from our customers saying, you're the best pharmacy and I'm never going to leave. So there's a lot of rewarding moments too.
I like that. What I took away from that was, I bet you'll love this, is she took a challenge and turned it into an opportunity. And I think that goes to mindset, Amit, which you're very big on. So feel free to kind of respond on that, Amit.
Yeah, what I love, Michelle, that you're doing is just so fantastic. And this is something I learned years and years later, is you're planting the seeds not for now, but for the future. You're going to do what you're doing because that's just what you do. You're not doing it for one specific person or individual for a purpose. You're doing it because that's just how you do business and that's who you are. And those seeds that you're planting now are going to blossom in the future. And so if you can understand that from now, which years ago, I wish I would have learned for myself, that these are seeds that are being planted, and it's in the future, they'll blossom. And you just really, it's truly, you're doing all the right stuff. And I also like to ask Jason to allude to your question about staff. I love to ask you yourself, being outside of the pharmacy now, what do you do with your staff? Tell us a little bit about with RX Ambassadors and how you operate.
Yeah, so like you guys, we have a monthly and weekly meetings. So we meet once a week. We do a team huddle. We have it at the same time every week. We actually break it into different divisions too. So we have separate divisions that we talk about specifically on the sales and marketing side versus operations or client side. So that allows us to dig in a little bit deeper on each of those areas. I think reporting is a big one, right? Like having meetings is great, but you have to have a measurable goal that you're setting with your staff, right? So what is it that we're all trying to achieve? Does your staff know exactly what goals they're trying to achieve? Not only monthly, but each week, right? So reporting on those are critical as well. Doing kind of, we also do bi-weekly meetings where we do kind of like just a team huddle where it's different. It's not just about the operations in the day-to-day. It's an opportunity for us to get together and have fun. So there's like games that we might play or quizzes that we might do. There's different things that we try to do to engage. So those are some of the things that we do as staff. One question I wanted to ask Michelle is on the referral side of things. You were talking about how you took a challenge, turned it into a referral. You were talking about how you did in community engagement. And that led me to think about how Michelle was going out from a B2B perspective to try to build relationships. maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the strategies that you've done for reaching out directly to doctors' offices to drive in more referrals.
Absolutely. So Michelle, I'm in a smaller community of about populations about 20,000. So we are limited. We have basically, I'm going to just say, call it 8 to 10 clinics, basically. So we've sort of made a point to, number one, as you know, most importantly, you better make sure you know those clinics inside and outside. So not just the physicians, but the medical technicians, the PAs, know a little bit about each clinic and let them know you're here to serve them. And I also think for us, just having touch points, whether it's once a month, every few months, going to the office and just letting them know, hey, look, I'm here, we're here, what can we do for you? Just those little touch points. Our community is a little bit older in a sense, so those more traditional, I'll say. So things work a little bit differently. But in terms of just having touch points, we even do postcards we send out, which can be automated through RX ambassadors. Any sort of touch point. You're doing a fantastic job in community outreach, I think, which is great. And even the clinics, I think, are important because I do know that other pharmacies are visiting the clinics. It's a very competitive space, as you know, Michelle. And I think the more touch points you have, I think in the beginning, I was a little bit more like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to keep going back to the clinic, but I realized it's almost like me saying, I don't want to over email someone. I don't want to over send too many texts. I'm going to say this, which I have learned through Jason and through RX ambassadors, is I don't think you can ever do enough. I really don't. I don't. As long as you're bringing value. If you're just touching point to shoot the breeze, okay, maybe that's a different story. But if you're bringing some sort of little value, a little something you offer, I think it's fantastic. But I think those touch points are important. And I think consistency, as you know, is huge. Maybe not just popping in once a year during Christmas. I think it's important. I think it's actually the opposite. I think everybody pours in on Christmas. But I try to make it a point, whether it's February, summertime, when it's quiet, any opportunity you get, the touch point is great.
Yeah, those are some amazing points, Amit. I think that's one reason why we love implementing automation, right? Is it allows you to continue to stay focused on serving your patients the best. But you've created a campaign that allows you to do direct mail, fully automated, that looks like it's fully handwritten postcards that go directly to doctors' offices in the local area. So every month they're getting touches from you that feels very personalized. And it is, right? Like you've taken the time to build a program to stay engaged in front of those so that you can continue to get referrals from them. So I think that's a really smart way, and it's a one-to-many approach, right? Versus you only have so much time in your day. You can go do the drop-offs one by one, but that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. So trying to reach multiple doctors' offices at once is a great outreach strategy. So Michelle, I want to thank you so much for joining us today for RX Ambassadors and for the Friday podcast. You always bring so much energy and knowledge and excitement, and it was great to learn more about Sierra Pharmacy. Do you want to share any last bits of wisdom or information to some of our listeners about your pharmacy, or things that they can think about implementing in 2024 that can maybe help them to bring a little bit more work-life balance in their lives and in their pharmacy?
I think one thing that comes to mind with the new year is that, if you're kind of just stagnant, you're not changing, you're not growing, you're actually going backwards. So you always have to strive for more and strive to improve yourself and your business. So don't be complacent. Don't be content with just where you are, or don't be discouraged either. You got to pick yourself up. A lot of it is, mindset, like you mentioned. So I've been reading a lot more audibles, more books recently. One that I've read that I really like is called The 6 Habits of Growth. So they kind of give you 6 actionable steps you can take, to change your habits and change your life. So yeah, you can only go up. So don't be discouraged.
Any New Year's resolutions that you're setting up before the end of the year?
Oh, you know what? I don't really do New Year's resolutions, actually. I guess on a personal note, I'm trying to go to the gym at least once a week.
There you go. Yeah. Once a week's good,
That's
right?
great.
Like,
Yeah.
when you say I want to go 3 or 4 times, that's like sometimes unobtainable, right? Well, like
Let's be realistic
small.
here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What about you, Amit?
Exactly.
Any New Year's resolutions?
I'm very similar to Michelle, or I might be the opposite, Michelle. In the past, I make a lot and I look at them like, okay, did I do this? I'm going to say one I'm gonna just say I love this. I had this sticker right by my computer. The pain of inaction is much more debilitating than the pain of incorrect action. So I'm gonna agree with that, Michelle. I'm just take more action and grow and learn, and I think just add value in any area that I can to anyone that I can. That's mine.
I love it. Mine would be to, this is something that we've been sharing with the team as well, is to focus on 1%. Focus on getting 1% better every day. Not 20%, not 30, 1% better. If you can focus on getting 1% better by the end of the year, you are going to have astronomical changes in your lives, your personal lives, your business, your professional development. I love that Michelle's reading and listening to audiobooks. That's a big one, especially on growth and how we can get better every day. So again, thank you guys for attending the Pharmacy Friday podcast. For those listening in, if you would like to be interviewed, if you're an independent pharmacy owner, we love inviting each pharmacy owners into the Pharmacy Friday podcast. You can text pharmacy to 602-878-6007. And that's 602-878-6007. We look forward to interviewing new independent pharmacies and talking about the innovative growth strategies that they're implementing. So once again, thank you to Michelle Lam from Sierra Pharmacy, and thank you to Amit Kakar from Avalon Pharmacy. Hope you all have a wonderful and happy new year.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you so much. Sure. You're welcome. Happy New Year, Michelle.
Happy New Year.